What I teach is all about seeing. Everyone should paint, or at least draw. Don't worry about critiques, whether people think it's good or bad. You're painting purely for yourself, for your own development. You're training yourself to see the colours, shapes and subtleties of the world around you and recording that. Ideally, people should be able to feel how I felt when I was out painting in nature. Anyone can learn technique. Technique is not art. The ability to see the world around you is art. Copying someone else's photo or a picture from a calendar or a book is not art. You're not putting down how you feel about something, you're just copying someone else's vision. So don't worry about what your paintings look like. You don't have to show them to anyone, husbands, wives, friends. They're personal record of your vision. But the important thing is to paint or draw a lot. At least 100 paintings, let's call them studies, a year. I feel it's better to do a lot of small studies and learn something from each of them than to try to do a masterpiece a year, which will probably start off badly and end up worse, and you'll learn one thing from it, and that's probably that you don't want to do it anymore. Use the best materials you can afford. Pretend you went to Las Vegas with $300 and you knew you were going to blow it, and you did. You had some fun, you don't care about the $300. But instead, go to an art supply store and get $300 of the best materials you can get. Take them home and use them up fast. You can't make something from nothing. Be prepared to use lots of paint, paper towels and all sorts of other supplies. It doesn't much matter what you paint on, but it should have a surface that helps you to paint rather than hinders you. I'm George Allan, and what I'm going to attempt to do today is try and give you a little insight into how I paint, why I paint, where I paint, and the paint and tools that I use. We're painting on location, which all my classes are generally on location classes. And I'm going to show you a little bit about my palette. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do a little demo, and I'll be going around and you'll be following me around, my students, as I help them with their paintings. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the paint that I use. This is my palette. This is the colors I use whether I'm in the studio or outside painting. It's all the same. This is the white I use is a mixed white. It's a titanium and zinc white. Titanium is transparent but very flexible. Zinc's much more opaque, like zinc oxide on your nose. But together they give you a very stable and very good flexible paint that's opaque. The cadmiums, Cadmium Red Scarlet I use. It's a Rembrandt paint, and it's Cadmium Red Scarlet. You'll notice it's right on the verge of being orange, but that's a particular color that I like. I like my primary red to be really bright. I don't like it to go to the blue side at all. Cadmium Red Scarlet, Cadmium Orange, and Cadmium Yellow. They're all Rembrandt brands. The next one is alizarin. It's a little hard to see there. Let me put a little bit of white with it so you can see what it looks like. And this here is ultramarine blue, and together that's what I may use to make black. You see, I put them both together. A lot of the ultramarine blue and a little bit of the alizarin, and it gives me a good black that's a lot more bright and vibrant and exciting than using just a regular black, which for me tends to just go flat. When I want a sort of a purple color, I just mix a little bit of white with it, and I've got a color that's very useful for me when I want to make a shadow, a yellow shadow or something like that. I use a little bit of its opposite, which in this case is purple, opposite on the color wheel, and it gives me a shadow, which in turn, when you put a little bit of bright yellow with it, you'll see that it makes the bright yellow look even brighter. Okay, next I go to all my dark, cool greens. I've got Viridian here, Viridian green, and I put a little bit of this ultramarine with it, and that gives me my darkest green for, say, the underside of a tree, the shadow area. You'll notice it's very cool and very dark. The next one I'll use is a Viridian, and I'll put a little bit of the orange with it. That would give me my next tier. It's a little warmer, but it's still very dark up the tree. There, let's put it. Okay. The next one I would use, and then I mix. Let me get rid of this. The next one I would use would be Permanent Green Light. And to use this, I generally put some yellow, some orange together. Don't mix it too much. That's one thing I really emphasize, is not to mix your paint too much. It just homogenizes it and it flattens it, and it you don't get the brilliance and excitement anymore. It's all gone. So I mix a little of that into the permanent green light, and that'll be my next sort of tier up. You'll notice there, now you mix them in a little bit. Yeah. And then for the bright highlights, when the sun shines on the top of the trees, I'll put a little yellow with that permanent green light, maybe a lot of yellow with the permanent green light, just depending on what you want. And you'll get the little highlights around the top of the tree. You can shove just a little bit of that in there to make a little variety. So there's your highlights. Okay, that's the greens, and they go from very cool and dark to very warm and light and intense. Let me see here. As you can see, I use a lot of paper towels. One thing I find that's essential with palette knife painting, if you want a nice painting that's clean, good clean painting, is you've got to clean your palette constantly. You've got to clean your palette knife constantly, and you just use a lot of paint and you use a lot of paper towels. The next thing around the palette is the blue that I use. Now, for years I used cerulean blue, but now I've found I can get a much brighter color that's like a cerulean blue, but it's much brighter and more intense. And I always think if I start with the brightest colors, I can go duller by putting this opposite on the color wheel in there, but I can't go brighter. So I'd prefer to start with something bright. I use the Rembrandt blue, which is the same as phthalo blue or Windsor blue. It just depends on the brand you're using. They're all the same, and they're very permanent colors. They're extremely permanent. And I put just a little bit of Rembrandt green or phthalo green in with it, and that's the blue that I use for lots of things like lower sky, ocean. It's a very useful color. Very useful color for me. Then I can just put a bit of white with it, and you can see I'm getting a good useful blue there. Okay, let's get that out of the way. All right, now the next two colors on the so that was Rembrandt blue or phthalo blue, Rembrandt green or phthalo green. The next ones on the palette are earth colors. Now I've got two earth colors there, and I use them very seldomly, so it's very seldom, because for me they sort of muddy things up. I think they're fine maybe up in the Pacific Northwest or Canada or somewhere where the colors aren't quite as intense, but here the colors are so intense that you need to keep paint there that's going to keep things bright. And I think I keep these earth colors here. That's burnt sienna and yellow ochre more out of tradition than anything else, but I always put them out and I very rarely actually use them. Burnt sienna, of course, is a red, but it's a kind of a dull red, and yellow ochre is a yellow. It's a dull yellow, and I find that they kind of go a bit chalky when you put white in them, and so I don't use them too much. I prefer to mix those colours actually out of other colours. The next on the palette is Cobalt Blue, which again is a very useful colour, and I use that mainly for anything a dark, warm or cool colour that I want as a variety, just variety. I'm putting Cadmium Red Scarlet in there, and if I put a little orange in there, well, that particular colour I'll use for maybe rocks if I'm doing or the trunk of this this tree here, you know. Yeah, we've got some grass there. And if I don't mix it much, I get a lot of great little bits of colour coming through, which make the painting a lot more exciting. Now, if I put a little orange with that, that gives me the basis for all the skin tones that I use, with a little bit of white in there. I've got a colour there that I can make more orange, more pink. If it's a shadow area, I can use a little green, or maybe a little bluer for shadows, skin shadows. So you can see I've got a very versatile base for skin tones right there. And if it's not mixed too much, it's kind of an exciting series of colours for painting portraits or just people or whatever's going on where you need skin tones. Let's get rid of that here. I'm afraid that as you see, I don't mind wasting paint. If I'm finished with a colour, I just get rid of it, because I think it's extremely important to have a good, clear, clean space on your palette to mix colours with, because any little bits of residue of other colours is going to make your painting or your mixing, it's going to pollute it, and it's not going to be what you want it to be, which is a clear, bright colour. The next colour on the palette is Windsor Violet. It's a pretty exciting colour. It's a more or less recent addition to my palette, and I added it in because in jacaranda season here, these trees are just absolutely beautiful, and I never could get the colours that I wanted to, and I found this colour and it works really well. You can see a little bit of white in there, and of course for jacaranda, you'd put a little bit of its opposite in there, a little bit of green, and you got the basis for a mid-value. We'll make this sort of jacaranda-y, and then you got your light values going on there, with maybe a touch of alizarin in there, and you've got your light jacaranda colours as well. So that's the palette, and I have to say I've been using this on and off for a long time. I've added things over the years and thrown them out, and this is basically what I've been using for a long time, and it really hasn't changed a lot. As you can see, my palette, actually I made this myself. This is what I use when I paint outdoors. And it's just a very shallow box. It's shallow because palette knife, if you've got something with high sides on it, you can't get in there to use, and I like using the whole palette. I'm very greedy about that. I like the whole space. And I've got glass in here, which is wonderful to work on. Of course, the bottom of the box is painted white. So it's a really good thing to work on because you can keep it very clean. It cleans up instantly and very well. So from there, I think I'll go on and do a little demo of the scene here in my friend Sue and Terry's garden. And as long as the sun's out, why don't we get on with it? The scene I'm going to do today, it's pretty flat. It's very early in the morning, and there's not too many shadows. But I'm going to attempt to do a painting with a lot of elements in it, so that you can see a lot of things going. It's going to be very fast and very sloppy. I start off with just a really rough pencil sketch. This is painting, it's not drawing, so you don't worry about drawing. And I just get the elements in. There's a mountain out there with cloud on the top. Okay, the high sky, as you go up in the sky, you'll notice that it gets warmer, or it's blue, but it's got a lot more red in it. Cobalt blue has a lot more red in it than cerulean blue. So I'm adding a little cobalt into the mix here, and I'm going to put it on top there. Now you notice that this is a fairly warm sort of a blue. And it's just going on as fast and as sloppy as I can get it. Okay. And as the sky comes down, it gets greener. So your cerulean blue, you might see that I've actually put green in that cerulean blue in the phthalos, and it's quite green. So that's the next one I'm coming down with. And it just goes right along there. Actually, there's no clouds up in the sky there, so. Okay, now the sky, as it comes down, it'd normally get greener still. Sometimes you notice the lower sky, especially in Hawaii here, is quite green. And almost yellow at times as it gets right down the bottom. So I put a little yellow in with that blue. It gets paler and greener. Now that's what it would look like, except that today it's not like that at all. It's very hazy from the smog from the volcano on the Big Island. So it actually has some purple in it. So I'm using the same basic mix, phthalo blue, phthalo green, and a lot of white to get it pale. And this time I'm going to put, I could either put Windsor Violet, or this mixture of alizarin and ultramarine is a lot more subdued, and it's less intense. And I'm seeing that we're painting atmosphere, which is a long way away. I'm going to use this less intense purple in there. And it's going to go along the bottom here, bottom of the sky. Okay. Yeah, it gets even darker as you get over against the West Maui Mountains, so I'm going to darken the whole thing just a little bit. There. There you go. That's what. Now I'll go back over the whole thing and sort of just blend it in with the flat part of the palette knife. There you go. I'm going to add some clouds now into the mix over the mountains. Now the bottoms of the clouds are going to be the same sort of deal, except a little darker. You've got your standard blue there with your purple here in it. You mix It's a little darker, maybe a little more purple and blue. And it's going to go across. It's important to get the values right. We're not so concerned about colour as we are about values, which is dark or light, whether it's darker or lighter, or what the correct value is. That's what's important. The clouds themselves, I'll use a little of this mixture, yellow, orange, and generally I set my palette up so that I've put some white with it, so that the very lightest colour, instead of using white, I'll have a little bit of a warm colour in it. It could be either of these three, red, orange or yellow, but I prefer to have a mixture of these two, orange and yellow, and it's very pale, and I'll mix that in, and that's going to be bright things like clouds, except in this case they're not that bright, so I'm going to add a little of that same purple in there just to subdue it a bit. Just white out of the tube itself is actually not that bright. It's very sort of cool to me anyway. Looks cool. And I'll just add some of this up there in the clouds. As we're going through this, you might take notice of how I'm using the palette knife. When I mix, I'm picking up some colour, maybe with the top of it, maybe underneath it. I'll turn the palette knife. But the thing is, and I'll pick up a little bit of the colour I'm mixing in. The thing is, the paint always ends up on the bottom of the palette knife, not the top. It'd be very hard to deal with the paint on the top. So it's on the bottom. And don't overmix. That's very important. Okay, once you get the paint on there, you can go around and do stuff to it. You can make it lighter, darker, more intense. Okay, that'll do for clouds right now. Now, we've got more clouds over there, but let's not bother with that. We don't have a lot of time. Let's deal with the West Maui Mountains. We're going to use that same basic mix of colour. It's going to be darker though, a darker value of exactly the same thing. Some purple, some blue, and to tone it down a little, I might mix in just a little bit of green, but I'm going to, which is opposite on the color wheel. I use opposites to tone things down. You get yourself a good color wheel, and you look at what's opposite what, and you can grey things down by putting this opposite in. So in order to mix anything into this mix now, this is the value I want, and all I want to do is grey it out. So I'm going to bring that green to the same value to mix it in. Now if I mix this paint into this, and I took just the tiniest bit, it's still too much, and it's going to alter the value, you can see. But if I add some in that's already the same value, it's not going to affect it nearly as much. And all it does is grey it down. Not enough. Let's get a darker colour here. A little more of that. And so I'm going to have to darken that up a bit. Put it in. Don't mix it much. Yeah, that's better. That's what I wanted. A little bit of green. Okay. Now the idea is to go for variety all the time. It might be bluer, it might be more purple, it might be a little more green in it, but variety is what you really want here, not the same thing all across your canvas. So don't worry too much about what you're picking up on your palette knife. Just grab stuff and get some variety into it. Okay, and keep mixing. Don't try and mix a great big pile because you've got a lot of stuff to go on. Just keep mixing as you go along. And let's see. All right. Yes. Now under those clouds is quite dark, so I'm going to make sure that I've registered that fact. But it's also quite hazy under there. There's no really sharp lines, so I'm just going to futz them out a little bit here and there. And there we go. The mountain is much paler as it comes down and warmer, so I'm going to add a little of this orange in there, and if I don't mix it too much, some of that orange will show up. Okay. All right. We've also got Lanai over here now. I'm going to put that in. Of course, it's much further away, so it's a lot more, it's not nearly as dark. It's a lot, there's a lot of atmosphere in between me and Lanai, so I'm going to show that by having not so much. I'm going to put some orange in it. And again, I'm going to put some green to grey it out a little. And see what that looks like. Okay. Could be a bit lighter. All right. And it gets lighter again as it comes down towards the ocean. The ocean itself is very hazy today, and it's kind of hard to see. I don't want any intense lines up here. I don't want any hard edges. So I'm going to, the ocean today, as everything's so hazy, it's almost the same color as the sky at that point. It's very sort of hazy and got a lot of purple in it. So I'm just gonna, you're not gonna see much difference between Lanai and the water out there. And it's getting lighter as I go. I'm using pretty much pure our cerulean blue mix there as we come down. I could grey it down a little. If I was going to do that, I would use that cerulean blue. I'd add some white to get the value I want. It's too dark, add some more white. It's getting more like it. And if I want to grey it out, I'll use a little pale orange or a little pale red. Since this cerulean blue leans so much towards the green, that it's getting more towards red as its opposite on the color wheel. So I'm going to put some white with some red till it's about the same value as the blue. Pick it up, put it in, and that gives me just the grey I want. Okay. But I think it's important to get your values right, and if you're mixing in something or you're modifying it or graying it down, you really need to get that color you're mixing into the same value. Okay, we have the valley of the in front of the mountain there, which is sugarcane, so there's a lot of haze, so I'm just going to add a little green, a little more purple into that, and I'm going to, maybe we'll use just a little more green there for that, make the whole thing a bit darker value, so it'll stand out a bit better. Here we go, that's better, wow, yes. Okay. Not only is it important not to mix your colours too much on the palette, but it's also important not to mix them too much on your painting. You're much better off if you can just get the colours on there and sort of leave them there, so that you're not messing with them and you're not homogenizing them on the painting itself. Yeah, this the whole thing seems to get a little browner as you come around, so I'm going to add a little bit of that red-blue mixture into it. And use that. Let's see. Some purple. A little of that red-blue. And I'm getting what I want there pretty much. Okay. So. All right. Now there's not a very big dividing line, or there's no apparent line there. So I'm just going to soften that edge. There's some shadows over there from the clouds, so I'm just going to add them in just because it's going to make variety of paper. It's going to make some variety of colour. Actually, I need to put maybe a bit of orange in that to sort of tone it down a bit. Okay. But the big thing is not to play with your painting too much, just get stuff down. I really believe in doing lots and lots of fast paintings and not worry too much about what you're getting, and your intuition will take over a little bit. And this is going to get a little greener as it comes forward out of the haze, so I'm just going to add some here. All right, now we've got trees, which are sort of a mid-value. Let me get rid of everything else here. I don't want any of that stuff, so I'm going to get rid of it. Otherwise, it's just going to mix in with what I'm trying to get going next, and it's going to really do things with it that I don't want to happen. So I like to get rid of it. So for mid-value, I'm going to start with a mid-value. Permanent green light and some of this orange yellow mix in it. A little more. But I'm also going to there's some sort of red green in there, so I'm going to modify it a bit over this side. Okay. Now in front of this we've got some Protea down there that I can see that's quite pink. I'm going to mix some of that green with it. And the tops are quite pink actually. We've got darker area that comes down, and for the darks I'm using a lot of that cerulean, ultramarine and viridian. Then we've got some light leaves in the foreground there. As I go along, I'm just modifying what I'm seeing here and getting in. You'll notice that it's really important for me to find where the dark elements are, especially in this particular scene, because there isn't a lot of dark, so I've got to keep finding it wherever I can. I really believe that when you're confronted with a scene, and it's a beautiful scene, but it's hard to know when you first look at it exactly how to deal with it. So I believe that you shouldn't panic. You should get out there and take a look at it, get your bearings, take a couple of deep breaths, not rush into anything, and take in the whole scene. When you're standing there, you're more or less when you're standing there, you're taking in a scene that's high and wide, and this is what appeals to you: the width, the breadth. You're seeing it all. You're turning your head, and it's just a beautiful scene in front of you. But what you're confronted with is a format like this, and you've got to get that same feeling onto that canvas. So I believe that the idea is to bring elements from your whole vision into that format, and maybe take some away that aren't relevant or unimportant, so that what you end up with is the feeling of the whole thing, the whole scene, rather than just pick off a little bit of it and paint that. It's all right to zero in on subjects, that's fine, but for a scene, it's important to get the feeling so that someone can come up the next day and say, oh yeah, I know how you felt about that scene, because it's all there. So that's why I'm bringing things in, taking them out, to get the feeling of what it's like to stand here today and paint a picture of just what's here. Now we've got a pond down here, and I'm going to put that in next, even though there's a lot of stuff going on in the foreground. So the pond's quite dark. The surface of the pond is reflecting some water, but it's quite dark. So because you're seeing the bottom of the pond through that through the surface reflection. And then you're getting the reflection of the rocks and the plants and so forth that are in front of it, so that's quite dark. So I'm going to put that in with this Viridian and a little bit of, in fact I'm going to bring that right down. I'm going to do this pond a little larger than life, I think. I'm going to bring the whole thing down, give myself a little space there. You've got some rocks. I'm going to use this mixture, Cobalt Blue, red, maybe a touch of orange in there around the edge. Actually, I'm going to bring some of this black mix that I use. That's really ultramarine and alizarin, just to give it a bit more depth in the shadow areas. Mix it all in. There's a pile of rocks over here. Okay, let's indicate them. Now this will be the darkest value of that whole thing. I'm going to add some light values to it. I'm going to let that disappear off there. Let that go out there somewhere. A little orange here, maybe a little of this purple. Don't mix it too much. Okay, and then we've got a very light green beside the pond. It runs on there. You've got reeds going up here that are quite blue. Look for differences in green. Look for differences in the color of them. And when you first look out there, you're going to just see a lot of green, and it's hard to decide just what it is. But the differences in the greens, whether they're cool or warm, that is blue or yellow or red even, or grayed out, that's going to make a difference to your painting, because the variety's out there, nature gives it to you, and you got to figure out what to do with it and where to put it in. And as I said before, when you're confronted with nature and it's all around you and you've got to get that feeling, exaggerate. If it's a blue-green, make it bluer, because what you're doing is you're condensing that painting from a large area, from the whole world, down to a small area. So it's kind of like condensed milk. You're just condensing the whole feel of the thing. So it's okay to exaggerate. That's fine. We've got a sort of a, what kind of a plant is that here? It's some sort of weedy looking thing that sticks up straight. So it's a quite dark green at the bottom here, where it hits those rocks. It's in shadow, so I'm going to show that. Let's get some of this yellow ochre. That's different. It's different for me. And that brown at the top of these plants, I'm going to exaggerate a bit, because I need something warm up there to break up all this green that's going along. But I certainly don't want to make some polka dot thing out of it, so I'm not going to go around putting little polka dots of warm all over the place. But what I am going to do is just have these little warm parts that are going to make a difference. Yeah, there you go. I'm going to bring this background green down a bit, and it gets very dark under there. What we've got here is a Protea plant. This Protea plant is very dark at the bottom. Let's do that. Okay. It's very dark over there. Let's get anything dark will do. Just pick up anything dark that's on the palette. It doesn't much matter what it is. Right in front of there is dirt. Let's do dirt color, which is a mixture. I'm just picking up stuff that I've already got on a palette that isn't mixed up too much. It's not homogenized, and it's not too dirty. Haha, that's funny. What I'm painting is dirt. This Protea is, what is it? Is it yellow green, blue green, orange green, grayed out? It's everything, it's all of those. So I'm just going to pick up a bunch of all of those things and try and get the feeling of what that is there. So I'm going to get some orange green. I'm going to just put just a little blue in it. I'm going to get some Viridian, some orange in it. Let's put a touch of that in. A little red, put a touch of that in, not mix it up much. And so I'm going to, if I put that on right, then it's going to show a lot of all of those colors. There's some Protea on top of there, which is kind of a red. red, orange, and I'm going to mix a little green into that to tone it down. And we're going to paint these proteas. Now I'm not going to go and do a lot of little dots, even though it's quite covered with protea there. I'm not going to paint them all. I'm just going to paint a few in just the right places to give me the color and effect that I want, just to show that they're there. I don't want a polka dot thing. Okay. Just with the tip of that palette knife, then we can show some highlights, just maybe pale pink with just a little yellow in it, that shows that the sun's shining on it. And a variety, don't have them all the same. I can even put a little red in there just to make the underneath of them a bit darker in places. So I'm building up a little volume on all those little plants that I've done there. Okay, that continues on over there as sort of a bush thing. So let's put in a bush thing there. It's quite dark at the bottom, so let's get some dark going on. And there's quite a light highlight over there. So I have a variety of greens here, some blue greens and some yellow greens, just to give a little variety. They are out there, you just got to find them. The little plants around this pond are quite yellow. They're very yellow, in fact. But just yellow by itself can be sort of jarring, so I'm going to put a little purple in that, which is the opposite of yellow, to sort of modify them a bit around there. And I'm just going to place them around here. A little bit of purple in there, some more yellow, a little bit more purple, and we just go around that pond. Yeah, there's some around there. Some green there, and there's a sort of greeny blue bush under there. There's water lilies. I'm going to put them in. There's a shadow underneath this plant on the rocks, so I'm going to make sure those rocks are in shadow. Okay, and don't have a lot of sun on them. I've put some highlights on the rest of the rocks around here. As you can see, I've darkened up some areas under there, picking up any old dark that I've got around here. This is where this Windsor Violet comes in handy. It's a great dark that's very colourful to just pick up. There's all sorts of little plants and flowers around the pond. So you've got some alizarin crimson. You can have a variety of values there, from light to dark. And so as we don't go crazy with this and have bright colours all around, bright little polka dots, we're going to put a little green in with them, just to, and we're not going to go crazy about putting lots of stuff around either. We're just going to show a few little things in a few places, and that'll do it, I think. And we're almost done with this painting. I could use something sort of purpley blue out here, because I got a lot of. And you just check and see what you need. There's some plants in the water. Okay, they're kind of a little orange there. So we just pick up a variety of colours and put them in there, sort of little water lily pads. There's not a lot of them. There's some up this end. I'm going to just put a little more reflection there to reflect the sky a bit. There's some orange fish in there, but I don't know if we really want to put them in. Let's. Okay, we're just about done with this painting now. I think we'll just stand back and we'll let you have a look at it. Yeah, well, we could do some more things to that, but at this stage we've done a really fast demo, and what I've mostly wanted to do was show you about values, darks and lights, what's warm and cool, what's really important that way. So I think what we'll do is get on with all of you people going out and painting the painting, and I'll come around and help you. Of course, Annalisa, I know you've done a little sketch that I like you to do before we start painting to solve some problems with. But I'm going to do a little one now because you've started your painting, but I don't see any values in there. I don't see any darks, and I like to see a little more of them. So let's just do a little pencil sketch here. You got your mountain real fast. You shouldn't take more than a minute for this. Clouds, there's the mountain there. You've got your water coming around, your trees going here. Now we have to start finding some dark elements. Let's bring that down a little more. And you can see how doing a sketch here, you can solve all those problems. There's a little tree cutting up through there that you're going to put in to cut that the island a little bit. Now the trees are going to have to be a darker element. I notice you got them pretty light there. But and of course under the clouds there you can add a little dark. You can make that a little darker as well. Lanai is almost gone, but I would indicate it. Around the bottom of the mountain where it meets the sea, you could do something there, darken up the ocean just a little bit. But basically your trees are going to have to be it. So I would make sure you darken them out a little. There's some shadows on the mountain, there's some shadows in the valley over there. I'd add them to add some variety of value as you go. Okay, so much for that. Let's do a little color sketch. Here's your pencil, love. A little color sketch. Can I have a lend of your, and you can feed me, normally I would use door skin. That's little birch panels for when I'm doing sketches. Out in the field here, I just use a piece of mat board. It's wonderful for doing a little sketch. It's not important so you can feel it, you can waste it, which is great. Just your sky. Okay. Now I don't care. This is a sketch. Oops, you've got your white pretty dirty there, Annalisa. That's unforgivable. For a sketch, I don't care what colours I'm picking up. I'm much more concerned with values. Annalisa, you have to get rid of a lot of this stuff because you've got it all messy. And we don't want messy. Okay. A little bit of purple. There's your mountain. Okay. All right. Your sky comes down. Lanai is lost right now there, so we're not even going to worry about that. Your mountain's there. You got some things. You've got some clouds. Some white, a little bit of orange in it. Let's pop them there. But you can see already how the values pop out just a little bit. The valley almost the same color as the mountain there, with maybe a little touch of green in it. We've got that down here. It's very hard to distinguish. The water is quite dark at this time. Let's put a bit of purple in there. It's actually darker than the mountain, and it sort of blends in with that background. A little bit of green there. Okay. Some darker shadows on the mountain. Underneath the clouds on that, in the central part of the valley. Let's get that darker over there where the water comes against the valley there. Yeah, that's it. Let's get that mountain into there. Now your trees, you're going to use your Viridian, a little bit of orange. Don't get too much orange over here because you tend to put too much in then. And I'm going to take that away and I'm going to put it way over there, out of the way. If you put too much in, it goes brown and olivey, and it's not really what you need. So over that, we're just going to put these trees all the way along. But see how keeping it a bit darker gives you some contrast. A little bit of orange. I'm going to put that all the way along. Then you can come back in with your lighter ones. It's too much orange again, Annalise. I'm going to take that away for you because all your paint just tends to go orange, you know. That the cadmium colors are really, really intense. And it's hard to deal with. Just the slightest little bit in there is gonna really modify things. So you can put just highlights of a lighter green over that, but basically you've got your dark going. Then underneath that, I see there's some Protea with sort of an orangey, sort of a red blossoms on it. You can put a few of them along there. You know, you got a sort of a bluey green thing going on there over this side, bush. Underneath those trees over here is very dark, and we're just picking up little bits of darks, little bits of lights, you know. And now these ones in front are very yellow green, these bushes in the front there. But see, the difference is to end up with a painting that's kind of balanced with some lights and darks. And these bushes kind of go right all the way along there, but I wouldn't take them all the way along. I'd tend to put some, relieve it a little so that it just doesn't go off the picture like marching soldiers somewhere, you know. Some dark down there, maybe a little bit. Out here is sort of green grass. You can use that yellow green that we've got here. Okay, so try and modify it with darks and lights and so forth, and rather than sort of pastel-y, if you get what I mean. Yeah. Okay, let's just put that there so you can check out those darks and lights. All right, Annalise, go for it. I'll be back in a minute.
Should I remove the land mass that's here and add more sky and bring it into the trees?
Yeah, well, since you've really focused in on this, on a small segment of your painting, if you add too much detail out here when your focus is really trees and foreground, I wouldn't get too detailed about this area. It's very hazy out there, so I'd indicate variations in value, like the clouds are lighter, and underneath the clouds the mountain is a little darker, and then it gets maybe a little greener. But I'd stay very much similar values and just sort of indicate where they stop and start, and leave it there and focus more on the trees. It's beautiful. This is going to be a really nice painting. There's not much to say about it, but it's really nice. One of the things is, I know you're not finished this, but this hard edge is a little unrelieved. And when I look along that edge, I do see a little relief. It's very subtle, but they're the things I like to exaggerate, where the grass maybe comes up a little longer and it's smudged out, like you've done there. But I think I'd just indicate it a little more in places, you know. But this is coming along great. It's really good, Cecilia. Patty, this is looking good. This is looking really nice. It's going along. It's going
Those
really
are my
well.
values. I can't seem to get my darks to stay.
Well, maybe you're mixing a little too much. I'd be inclined to not mix quite so much. And under the mountain here, you could actually go a darker value. I'll just show you what I mean. No, I'd rather use this. Is this this is the biggest one you use?
Yeah.
Actually, this is quite nice. It's quite flexible. I prefer
The
bigger
long.
ones. But if you can't get a good one that's nice and flexible, then you're better off with this that is flexible. Flexibility is the most important thing for it. You've got your mountains. I'd let me see your layout here. What's this? This is phthalo. Yeah. Anyway, you've got your, let's just say, for instance, you've got your clouds here, the underneath of your clouds. Then you've got your lighter colour. Do you put medium with this at all? Or
I put medium with the white.
oh, okay. The tops of your clouds are going to be, see, it doesn't really matter what colours you pick up. As long as they're lighter and warmer than what they're over, you can even pick up a bit of that. Lighter and warmer. And then you've got your valley, which is a little green. Let's see, let's get a little light green going here. You put a bit of green in that so that the valley actually is down here. Now underneath those clouds, you can just get the same colours but a little darker value. Don't be scared of dark values and don't mix too much. People tend to just overmix and overmix both on the, see, underneath.
The darker.
Yeah, and that'll make the whole thing stand out from the clouds, you know? See,
Yeah.
just put it on. And then you can bring it back down, smudge it just with the flat of your, see? You can even indicate there the little ridges and things as they come down, you see. And then of course this it blends in with the valley, so with the bottom of your knife there. Then your trees, at the moment the sun's gone in, so they're quite dark, you know. So I'd pick up some colour, but you can see, oh, that's a nice colour, isn't it? You're doing real well here. That's great. That's something I can learn, this little combination of colours going on here.
Yeah, the phthalo and yellow makes a great
Yeah, you've just taught me something here. But the thing is, as I say, the colours don't matter much. As long as you keep your values, get your values right. And that's nice and dark. Then of course you can come across with these ones in front are a lighter green. So they're going to, you could put a touch of red in it just for a bit of variety. But they're going to come up like this all the way along. Then at the top you've got your little Protea going on there, which is a sort of pinky colour, which gives you a little bit of a difference between those two greens. You know, always look for things out there that are going to modify what you've got going. So you can see how it gets very dramatic, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, for the darker right in the
yeah,
there.
but if you don't mix too much and keep it really clean, really clean. Don't mix on your palette, don't mix on your painting. Don't worry too much about the colors you're using, just pick them up, don't homogenize them. When you get round to putting your trees in, put them in, boom.
Okay.
You know, and look for the little contrast, your opposite colors, like orange or red, and the bluey greens and stuff are opposites. So you need to put them in between, yeah. Just so you got the contrast.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good little knife.
Yeah. I like
Yeah, great.
This one. Thank you.
Great. We'll be back a little later. Okay, Bill, this is looking good. You're doing a great one here. I can see you got lots of colours, but over here, your values are fine. That's all I'm concerned about. Your colours are great. Values are fine. When you're getting down here, I think I tend to look and find the contrasts to have some darker elements there. This will make your whole more atmospheric part of the painting really stand out. But you've covered your palette, you've covered your painting really well. And I know you're new to the palette knife, but you're doing great with it. It's funny how fast you can get used to just that little touch. Is there anything specific you want some help with on this one, or is it going along? It seems to be going along fine with me.
Yeah. If I got this too dark?
No.
Okay.
It's kind of all the same value. The only thing that really stands out there is the clouds, and that's exactly what you've done.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't. The only thing is here, you can't really see that horizon out there anymore. So I'd lose that.
Lose that. Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's fine. I might make a little more contrast between the mountain here and the water.
And the water.
Maybe by lightening that
Lighten
up
up the
just a
water,
little
yeah.
bit around there.
Shoreline.
It's grey, but I'd sort of maybe blue it out just a little more or something, so it's a specific colour and not quite so neutral. Neutral greys, I don't know why, but they always worry me. I'd like to see them either warmer or cooler. In this case, I think it could be a little cooler. But not quite so neutral maybe. Otherwise, it's going along great. Terrific.
Well, I got a lot of old paintings I can doctor up now with a palette knife.
You're right. That's great. Well, I'll see you a little later on. Well, Pat, what do we got here? It's great, except you need a little more color.
Yes.
It's wonderful. It's really wonderful. I don't have to tell you anything about contrast. You really do it. What you don't do contrast with value, you're doing it with color, which is just another way of doing it, especially opposites, your greens, your oranges, all this. This is preliminary, I know, and you're going to pull this all into shape as we go along. But it's exciting to see this, the development that you do. It's really wonderful. You can always come up with surprises. It's great, great to work with you.
Thank you.
Composition's fine. This, I'd like to see what you're going to do here, whether it's going to be a slow transition, or this is really going to come down as one value and start off as the next, which it actually is doing from your vantage point. Yeah. So you're going to have to resolve that. This is the land going up. You're going to have to resolve that. That mightn't be quite subtle. I'm not quite sure. It could be maybe a little more subtle. But here, I think you could go a little darker with your values there, just so it's going to stand out. And you could get, because you got wild and woolly colors going on here, I think you could come across with a little brighter green against that purple. It'll really stand out. If you don't want to go as dark with your values, as maybe I would, or you can do it with a brighter color against the purple. You got a beautiful bright purple here, so you can do it with color. So your greens could be maybe a little brighter there, and it's a little overworked, you know. As it comes down, your values can get darker and so forth and so forth. And you're going to work over this orange. This is wonderful, your greens. It's going to be exciting to come back in a few minutes and see what you're doing.
Thank you.
With this one. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Whoa, Sue, this is a nice little one. This is great. You're doing great here.
Thank
I think
you,
it's better than
George.
my one.
No, I have a good teacher, George.
No. This is fine. I see you going along with your rocks, putting them in dark, putting little highlights when the time comes, and your shadows are fine. Maybe a little darker right under the rocks where the shadows of the plants come in. Might be a little more, but actually you got a nice contrast here beneath the rocks and the water, and actually you've got your darker here. It all makes a really nice little balanced painting, really, with your reds that break up the green and coolness of your painting, and the little fish swimming around that are just right. They're just right.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, it's really nice the way you've brought your strokes down to give you a reflection, and yet you've got your little strokes going across to sort of break the surface of the water up as well. This is going really well.
Thank you.
Yeah, terrific. Carry on. When it comes to taking lessons, I believe it's important not to stick with one teacher. Take as many lessons as you can with as many artists as you can come in contact with. Even if you learn just a little bit from each one about technique and their philosophy and attitude about art, it'll contribute to your personal vision and statement. You won't end up being a clone of someone else, but will develop your own individual style.